paper. This is The Philosophy of Semiotics by Robert E. Taranto. And this is an old thing. This is from 1981, and it looks like maybe this was a conference someplace Yargang Heft. So the third of Heft, whatever Heft is. 1981. Someone will have to help me on the I guess German or whatever this is. Okay. But yeah, as always, feel free to ask questions along the way. Read something on semiotics. This is my first time reading it. I don't know what it is. I am not endorsing it, but we'll take a look. And as always, feel free to ask questions along the way. And here we go. Yargang is basically year. Okay, so year of our Lord. See, Heft. Well, what's Heft? Heft is a journal. Okay, so it's in so it's like the 6th. Okay, maybe it's so the 6th edition of the year coming out and on the 3rd of something, 1981. F3? All right. Yeah, cool. Thank you. I really should learn some other language one of these days, but I just speak English and bad English. Anyway, here we go. The basis for the philosophy of science is the theory of science. Yeah, issue 6, volume 3. Yeah. The basis for the philosophy of science is the theory of science, which includes the traditional epistemology as well as cybernetics and system theory, which also provide the foundations for the theory of numbers and perhaps even for the theory of mathematics. As a matter of fact, all sciences are bound together by the theory of science, which mathematical logic, linguistics, model theory, physics, and of course semiotics, to mention only a few, play an important part and therefore should be considered as integral parts of it. Yeah, okay, so this is just background stuff. Since Charles Sanders Peirce defined semiotical epistemology, it has become clear that no single data can exist that constitutes the basic element of cognition. Knowledge can be neither the mosaic nor the hierarchical structure made of elementary data because no single datum has any cognitive sense. That is, there's not a separate self-subsistent content. I mean, this is fair. Nothing is to be taken there's not ex nihilo, not en vivo. It's like whatever. There's another Latin term by itself. Like you can't take anything outside of it. Sort of like nothing is outside of any context. 6th time they published it. Okay. Okay, each and every meaning coexists with other meanings in a structure of interrelated networks, and only due to this fact can an emotional or intellectual content be existent. A single isolated cognition would be meaningless and hence impossible. Consequently, each meaning can be comprehended exclusively through other meanings, never directly. Tabula rasa. That wasn't what I was thinking, but yeah, that also is it's close. It's Latin, but like it's like one of the X things, like en vivo, ex nihilo, like it sounds like that. Yeah, it doesn't matter. Like my recall is the first thing that goes when I stream. Semiotics is the theory of signs overcomes the traditional dualism of subject and object in epistemology. Cognition is no longer interpreted as the dyadic relation and becomes triadic representation, which implies that the direct approach to an object is impossible. Not sui generis then? Ooh, was I thinking sui generis? No, because sui generis is unique. It is not taken by itself. So, I mean, I was thinking taken by itself, not meaning unique. So, not sui generis. Dude, I gotta talk to you. Like, I've been like, you probably weren't here a week or two ago, but I was like, I'm gonna do more metaphysics this year. Like, I'm gonna do more metaphysics. So, oh yeah, speaking of, where's my manners? If you guys don't know Luminance Bloom, he also streams. He is a Heidegger and poetry expert. He does poetry streams sometimes, does Heidegger streams sometimes. He was doing work through of the Critique of Pure Reason. He was doing some Kant earlier in the year. So if you don't know our buddy Luminance Bloom, go give Luminance Bloom a follow. We got to make a allusion to the most metaphysics this year. Yeah. Occult Aesthetics. All right, everyone. All right, I'm back. Hooray. Welcome back, Occult. I'll actually start streaming again soon. Yeah, so give Luminance a follow if you're interested in continental philosophy, if you're interested in aesthetics, because, I mean, like I said, poet also, and philosopher. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, so the simple point. You're not taking any object of knowledge, instance of knowledge, anything by itself. There is no knowledge without knowledge of comparison or without relation to any other form of knowledge. You just can't do stuff on its own, because if you try to have like some sort of knowledge on its own, say, okay, like I was saying earlier, the number one. The number one doesn't really make sense if you don't know of any other numbers. You need 1 versus 2 or 1 versus 0, and only in that comparison do you understand what the number 1 is. If you try to take the number 1 by itself with nothing else, it doesn't really represent what 1 means to people. So yeah, occultist dedicate, yeah, continental forever, yeah. I mean, I am a promiscuous philosopher. I do like my Heidegger a little bit too much. Yeah, that was another thing I was thinking today. I was like, yeah, a little bit of Heidegger. Energy says, background assumptions to my understanding are necessary for most knowledge. Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's related. They don't call it background assumptions in this area, energy, but that's a related topic. Like, that's overlapping exactly. Occult says, I'm looking partly to see whether or not people like this sort of stuff because I'm meaning to stream and talk podcast many thinky things. So, Occult, there is a great desire for humanity's work and thinky stuff because the world is kind of on fire. I mean, it's been on fire, but like I think people in the United States are starting to realize it's not what they thought it was. Things are not going the way they thought they would be going. And so they're trying to find new ways to understand it. Now, how do we connect the people who have been talking about this stuff forever, like philosophy and whatnot, to the people that are looking for it? That's a marketing problem, and it's a little bit of it's difficult. But there's definitely like all the streamers, like again, I think you know Luminance, but if you don't know our buddy Aristotle and our buddy Shane, they say the same stuff. There's people want to have smart discussions and alternate points of view that are like not just bullshit points of view. They want to have like smart points of view. They just don't know where to find it because there's so like much of a disconnect in our society between people who do this sort of work and the just general public. That's all. Yeah, you're unfamiliar with us, folks. Well, let me give more shout outs then. Aristotle. Let's see if he's not lurking. Okay. Our buddy Aristotle. So if you didn't guess by the name Aristotle, he is a thoughty for thought. He is a scholar in Aristotelian virtue ethics, and he's does a lot of virtue ethics. He does Cynic philosophy, Stoic philosophy. He's an ethicist, and and his streams are mainly him shit posting and just chatting with some philosophy, some philosophical analysis also. And so it's like, you want to go talk philosophy, you go there, but you can also shit post to your heart's content. I shit post a lot less than he does. There's still some shit posting in here. Not to mention a Stardew Valley soy boy. That is correct. So, but as far as the, I may be the only person who just sits here and reads a philosophy PDF, but there are other philosophers on Twitch. Like, yes. So Luminance is one, Prof is another. He just got partner, but he doesn't do usually straight philosophy streams. He does gaming and we'll talk philosophy. Same with Tommy, same with other folks. But yeah, okay. PDF I'm into, big old nerd over here. Yeah, I'm a PDF streamer if you can't tell. Like, PDF is my game. Okay, but back to the paper. Cognitive reference to, oh, you know what we can do? I can't do that yet, sorry. I got all excited for a sec. I'll do it in a minute, you'll see. Cognitive reference to an object has to be mediated by some means which will say that a particular object is meant in a particular way and never just simply felt. Hence it is neither ever free of interpretation nor fully present. That is where traditional epistemology cannot serve as the scientific tool, and the wider scope of the philosophy of science has to be invoked and applied. Yeah, you can't just... I was talking to a physicist a while back and he was like, oh yeah, F equals ma. I was like, you can't take F equals ma out of the context of how do you define force and mass and acceleration. He's like, well, you can do that mathematically. I'm like, yeah, but you don't understand it mathematically. You have to apply them. And so he didn't like that so much. But I was like, yeah, this is part of the issue, is that even if you're doing basic Newtonian mechanics, the notion of a force, even a physical force, is still a socially defined term. Like, you can narrow it down what they mean in physics, but like that's a still socially defined understanding. PS5, no. PDF, yeah. As stated above, cognition and perception are not dyadic but triadic functions as defined in information transmission and semiotics. Between subject and object and have to be mediated through a medium, in this case cognition and perception as memory interpretant. The mind is in the position of an interpretant rather than the creator of cognition. However, as a system of signs, cognition exists outside consciousness and is self-subsistent to it. Yeah, so you got to remember, you can think about the Kantian background of all of this. You had concepts, and that's how we interpret the world. Now we're more scientific. We're not just going to be like, oh, the concepts are how we interpret the world. We're going to have these sort of semiotic cognition relations that, mediate how the signs and objects are understood by our cognition. But we're not doing any, we're not just being like, oh yeah, concepts. No, we're going to have cognition and things like that. And theories of signs. That's how it works. But it's more sophisticated than the old Kantian theory. The general theory of signs differentiates between presented and represented aspects of things, between the given and the designated, the factual existing material world, and the intelligible hypothetic function of the mind. That means semiotically between object and object relationships. Like I said, you can only really think of like the number 1 in relation to the other numbers. You can't just think of the number 1 by itself. It doesn't really make sense. You need the object relationships. You need that series of system of signs there. The reality of objects, at least partially detectable, whereupon object relations can be thematized, as will be shown in the chapter of thematics of realities. Okay, so maybe this is an introductory paper that they're kind of going into the background of what semiotics is currently, or at least as it was understood in the early 80s. In general, the theory of signs does not provide any clues regarding the quality or the value of information, of knowledge per se. It does tell a lot about the nature of information. In a universe of signs, there is no place for self-justification. No sign can be self-evident because ex definitione, I can't say my Latin. Ex definitione, it depends on other signs. All information processing is based on semiotics and so can be seen as the foundation of all information processing theories. Yeah, so you've got to have some series of, as like we might say nowadays, abstractions where all the different abstractions are related to each other. But how does that work? You still need that system there. Information theory as defined is concerned with the discovery of mathematical laws governing systems designed to communicate or manipulate information. While the central parts of this theory are chiefly of interest to communication engineers, some of the concepts have been adopted and found useful applications in fields such as psychology, linguistics, and semiotics. It is important to keep in mind that this theory is quite different from classical communication engineering theory, which deals with the devices employed but not with that which is communicated and with how it functions. A basic ideal in information theory is that information can be treated very much like a physical quantity, such as mass or energy. Encoding and decoding of information, as well as measurement of information, can be very exacting functions and useful for understanding the operations involved. However, this is not the place to go into these details. Kadir says, if I was alive in the 80s, I almost certainly would have been doing crimes and cocaine, not philosophy. I mean, that was like all of business back in the day. Yeah. And Bernard Stiegler went from doing crimes in the 80s to doing philosophy. I did not know that about Stiegler. Andrew says, I believe theory related to information is also relevant for economics as a subject matter. Yeah. So these are all related. Absolutely, energy. With the rise of the internet, all this communication and information stuff has also exploded in some sense, because we had the internet, which is one thing, and now we've got the LLMs, which is a whole new fucking can of worms where all of these things also apply. You think he got into philosophy while he was in prison? Well, good time to read books. Okay, the scheme of information theory is based on the following sequence. So you've got this box, information source, the originator, some transmitter, so you've got channel, noise source, and then the receiver, the destination, address, interpreter. Or when applying the prime signs of the fundamental categorical prime sign relation introduced by Max Benz, in the theory of representation, you've got the world over here, object of cognition, the repertoire, interesting way of saying like whatever the system is that you're using to interpret the signs, and then you've got the subjective cognition, the consciousness. So this repertoire is this system of signs here, which is an interesting way of putting it, but like not a crazy thing to say about it. You have a repertoire of ways of understanding things. So you've got like different sorts of methods of understanding things, and this is why me and Semiotics get along with the diagram talk, because you've got like these different methods, these different skills, these know-hows to actually put together the different sorts of things in the world. Okay, so this is weird. So in this theory of representation, sign processes, that is semiosis and retrosemiosis, are analogous to the scheme of the general communication system as shown above. The human mind uses signs and subsigns as vehicles for information. A thought is a sign, according to Peirce, that are interpreted as everything else in information in its broader sense, to include messages occurring in any of the standard communication mediums, and to include the signals appearing in the nerve networks of animals and man. Furthermore, the signals or messages need not be meaningful in any ordinary sense. The measurement of information, which indeed belongs to the information theory, is from the point of linguistics or semiotics of little interest, although when meaning, described, or relating to real or conceivable event, it is important to the communication engineer. Kelly says the best scene in Scarface is when Tony kills Frank and the cop, if you ask me. Okay. Man, I've not seen that in a while. Do I remember that? I don't remember that. Because I've seen that movie. Dang. Sorry. But yeah, I mean, that fucking movie's crazy. So much cocaine. First you get the money, then you get the power, then you get the women. It's a good scene, very climactic. I think I've got a piece of it, of when he kills Frank. I don't remember. Yeah. First you get the money, then you get the power, then you get the women. Why do I not have any of these things? I've got none of them. I mean, I know something about philosophy now. That's what I know. Yeah, I used to think about that. First you get the money, then you get the power, then you get the women. Like, I got no money, I got no power, I got no women. What the fuck? What am I getting myself up to? I should go get some cocaine and sell it. Anyway, the probability that the functions involved in thought processes are the same as those in information processing is quite large, and the operations involved could be similar. Sorry, because the transition is funny to me. This consideration makes an investigation of the facts involved to seem worthwhile. The general prevailing notion that the functions of the mind could not be described with reductive methods in opposition to the deductive methods, as from a computer, and hence also for models of the mind, does not hold true anymore, since the trial and error method was introduced by computers and the reduction method has become an integral part of information theory. It can be utilized in models of the mind and processes. This looks like an early artificial intelligence scheme they had. 3 things philosophy is very bad at giving you. I mean, some people do well. What, they would have made me go way harder? Maybe. Viper says, the worst scene was when I was having sex with my girlfriend on the couch with Scarface on the background, and the push it to the limit montage comes on and totally ruins it. Oh, I didn't see that first. Now I got it. Okay. Yeah, well, these things happen. Yeah. Put it to the limit. One more time. Algorithms involved in information processing systems are invariant to the representational transformation and are always completely divisible into activities and decisions. Cybernetics defines the human brain as an information processing system. Nevertheless, drawing parallels between a computer and the human brain has been quite often defined as unscientific, heuristic speculation. See, this is funny. Nowadays, we don't get these sorts of things. Nowadays, we're like all about this shit in the sciences and like the computer artificial intelligences. But like this is early theory in the 80s when they're starting to realize, no, we're gonna do this and this is how it's gonna work. You got to remember, a lot of the math used to be called, when you were doing stuff that could actually be computed, it wasn't called computable. It was, what's the term? Recursive. So it used to be called recursive, meaning that like you could put it into a loop and that was just recursive. Now they call it computable. So this flip over happened, I think, around this time when people started to realize, oh no, our logic that we could actually talk about being like loopable and like that could actually be contained in a system, we're just going to call that computable now, because people didn't have access to big computers and stuff like that. But once they realized they could, then you could be doing these sort of information mine sort of processes. But like this seems like really early days for this sort of talk. Yeah, recursion is hard, but exactly, Claudio. But this is when the ideas started to like get cemented in the researchers' heads that like cybernetics, like this is gonna happen. We're going to have AI and stuff, and it's going to have artificial minds. Like it's going, like this is on the horizon at this point. It's not going to be unscientific. It's going to be scientific. Okay, some scientists went as far as to declare such speculation unmoral and unethical. You see, like this is funny shit. Like they're talking about how scientists are like, oh, you can't do that. That's bad. It's like, this is early. Joseph Weizenbaum, who warns computer specialists not to get any arrogant, and computer brain functions with that of computers is one of many. Yeah, see, again, like it's like, oh, don't get arrogant. You don't actually know what you're talking about. And compares brain functions with that of computers as one of many. Yeah, it's like, don't do that. But does he really know enough about brains in order to make such a statement? On the other hand, brain researchers do compare brains with large computers, although they probably do not know much about computers, that is, about hardware and software. A computer processes rigorously precise data. Man accepts fuzzy data and carries out operations that are not strictly rigorous. Therefore, in a computer, memory and its treatment are distinct. In man, they are mixed. Computers use rigid addressing of data, but human memory works by using association of data presented as an argument. That is, retrieval is done according to the content of the information and not according to the external address artificially added to the data. The difference is qualitative as well as quantitative. Nevertheless, in human memory, retrieval of stored data is first done by some sort of associative network, and then location is selected by an item with specific characteristics. Yeah, so they're trying to justify their technical theorizing of the mind by using the semiotic concept systems here. Whatever the case, the differences or similarities are of no importance for the discussion. Here the subject is semiotics rather than computers or brains, although both are information processing systems. So you can see, they're already trying to make brains and computers in this area overlap by calling it information processing systems. Now, you could have multiple kinds of information, and they're eliding that. They're just being like, nah, well, it's only one kind of information here. And so this is a little bit strategic at this point, that they're just being like, there's only one kind of information that both humans and computers process. Is that the case? I don't know. But you can see the strategy here of trying to get semiotics as something that's going to jump the gap. A. Newell and H. A. Simon point out the indispensability in creative human thinking, as in computer simulations, of what they call heuristic operations in which a number of possibilities may have to be examined. But the search is organized heuristically in such a way that the directions most likely do lead to success are explored first. Means of ensuring that a solution will occur within a reasonable time, certainly much faster than by random hunting, include adoption of successive sub-goals and working backward from the final goal. Nevertheless, some known facts should be quoted in order to get a notion of the magnitudes involved, as mentioned by J. Eccles, and to abstract oneself from computers. There are 200 million discrete connections between the two halves of the brain. Okay, we're just getting into like old now bunk science. Like, I don't think this even makes sense anymore. Like, I think it's way higher, or whatever we classify as a connection is way higher nowadays. But like, this is interesting. We're just talking about 1981 neuroscience. There are 200 million discrete connections between the two halves of the brain, millions of microstructured column areas of the cerebral cortex defined as modules or basic units, which function as the modules or processors in distributed computers. Yeah, so this is not going to hold up to modern science right here. But they're trying to hand wave at, like, look how fancy the brain is. There is as yet no quantitative data on these module operations. However, the number of neurons in a module amount up to 10,000, of which there would be some hundreds of pyramidal cells, like the modules of integrated circuits, and many hundreds of each of the other species of neurons. As Eccles writes, quote, "We can only dimly imagine what is happening in the human cortex or indeed in the cortices of the higher mammals, but it is at the level of complexity, of dynamic complexity, immeasurably greater than anything else that has ever been discovered in the universe or created in computer technology." End quote. Today, a giant computer may have a dozen or so processors, perhaps interconnected with other computers over telecommunication links, but not millions. So yeah. So welcome to 2026, where we have AIs that are eating up every single GPU that we can produce, just to get even closer to sounding like human. That just hallucinates all the time, but that's a different issue. The three valent information bound inherent in computer programming, like index, pointer, and address, or base, displacement, and symbolic address, and so on, have different direct bearing on the triadic trichotomic sign relations in semiotics. Information is the stuff on which intelligence grows. The atoms of information are signs, and the science of signs, as mentioned already, is semiotics. Therefore, information in the system the systems and theories dealing with it must be considered as related to these principles. A system is defined as consisting of elements that are recognizable but indivisible entities. There are two groups of systems, namely static and dynamic ones. Attributes for dynamic systems are A, repertoire of transactions, and B, network for these transactions. Yeah. It's just like, it's not nostalgic, but like I'm feeling like back in the 80s. Like, go watch like movies from the 80s. What was that movie with Whopper? Mutually Assured Destruction with Ferris Bueller. What's his name? Shit. That was an early one. Like, this is what I'm getting. I'm getting like 80s sci-fi stuff at this point. And come on, my Gen X people. War Games. Thank you, Vipers. Yeah, exactly. So there was an old movie called War Games with Matthew Broderick. Thank you, Josh. Where, he hacks into a military system by mistake and sets off a war game simulation, which fucks with all the like legit like military computers and stuff like that. But like this, like just the way they're talking about, it's not like I think there's any actual like overlap between what they're saying here, but like this like just sound like how they used to talk about computers back in the day. So yeah, absolutely. Okay. If anyone didn't pick up, I should say hi. Josh is my actual cousin. So hi, Josh. I was like, I don't know if I should say that, but I will. I was like, hi, Josh. Hi, cuz. What's up, cuz? Anyway. A chosen repertoire must be able to reflect each occurrence within the system. The networks are basic blueprints of the system's architecture in which all paths between the various elements are described. Again, we recognize two types of dynamic systems, those made of material, that is physical systems, also called hardware systems, and semiotic or software systems, such as language, mathematics, and so on. Such software systems that reflect, that are based on hardware systems, are models. Hardware systems are further divided into natural, so that's physical, biological, social, and artificial, say, technical ones. The philosophy of systemology embraces all systems and models which can be realized. Yeah, so again, this would be, we would call this something else now. We would probably just call this like recursive theory, computability, but we're not going to call it systemology, about which can be realized. Like what are actual possible computer systems that we could realize? Although hardware systems dealing with information processing belong to cybernetics and software ones to semiotics, the fact that information theory and the theory of automata are the indivisible whole of cybernetics forces the involvement of semiotics in cybernetics in general. Yeah. The notion of memory is of importance when automata theory, system engineering, or mind and machine are subjects of discussion. See Wiener 48. mean, see this is crazy shit. Like the idea that we're referencing back to like 1948 theory, that's when, I mean, I think game theory was written, like the original book by Morgenstern and Van Neumann was 1948. So like this is like really reaching back. Memory and semiotics are closely related in the sense that without memory there is no mind as machine or as attribute. As in information theory, the channel, that is, the medium in semiotics, are indispensable elements, and both are memories in which signs are embedded. Regarding the memory aspect of information processing systems, it can be generalized that such systems with memories are considered equal in the sense of their functions are equal. That statement points to the cybernetic postulate that human reaction to action from the world as information originated in the human brain. Yeah, so now they're just really trying to line up like computer systems and brains. If you think of it as signs processing memory from and the world, then basically you're setting up the exact same thing as the AIs. You've got AI processing from the system of signs, which is the training data, and whatever the inputs are, and that's it. Memory stores signs, and their representational functions are schematic operations. I mean, yeah, we're just describing. This is like precursor LLM, precursor AI, precursor LLM stuff, in which the functional relationship M is always triadic, namely F equals, well, we've got a mathy thing here. I don't know what this is, but F of M, then we've got M of M, and then M of O and M of I. Yeah, something. Each representation is always a thematization and communication, hence representation is only possible by way of sign and their classes. The sum of all sign classes result is, so we've got the summation of semiotics, which is the summation of all mathematics, summation of all the logic, which is the summation of all the linguistics. So everything we say then gets reduced into some sort of logic-y stuff, which then can also be described as mathematic-y stuff, which is then all ended up a series of signs. Yeah. Classes composed of selected and ordained entities are inhomogenetical. No idea what that fucking means. Homogenical. Homogenical? Yeah, I don't know what that is. As for example, is the aesthetic state, where singularity and thematics are of the same sign class. One of the major controversial problems in the theory of memory originated from the human memory is the difference of opinion between the defenders of the classical electrophysiological or synaptic theory of memory storage and the defenders of a chemical theory, writes Popper, as if that question can give any clues to the real nature of memory. In Encyclopedia Britannica, the following is written about the subject. Quote, there is some evidence that the presence of nissal bodies in neurons indicate that the RNA, ribonucleic acid, plays a major role in the functioning of the nerve cells and is probably responsible for the storage of information memory. Yeah, so like this is all bunk science at the moment, which is kind of funny, and it's a little like, oh, well, they're trying real hard to be like on top of the science of the day, but what are you going to do? Philosophically, there are several approaches to a general theory of memory, but none too promising. For instance, the continuity producing memory of Popper is very much, I guess that's Karl Popper, is very much related to what Henry Bergson calls pure memory, as opposed to habits with Peirce's notation, a record of all of our experiences in their proper temporal order. This record, however, is not according the Bergson recorded in the brain per se or in any matter. It exists as a purely spiritual entity embedded in the sequence of the recordings, ergo software. Bergson substituted the famous dictum of Descartes, "Je suis une chose qui pense," I am a thing which thinks, to I am a thing which continues. And where Spinoza had presented reality sub specie eternitatis in its eternal aspect, Bergson presented it sub specie durationis in its durational aspect. This means that as long as movement in software exists, that is, information processing takes place, there will be the feeling of time, that is, there will be duration. Bergson's Time and Free Will, that's 1910, constitutes an attempt primarily to establish his notation of duration as opposed to what he considered to be the spatialized conception of time employed for scientific and public purposes, and then to proceed toward an original solution of the problem of free will. In Matter and Memory, a detailed consideration of the problem of aphasis leads to a profound study of the means, namely the memory, by which existence is made continuous, that is, notion of lifetime within the mind. Okay, so now we're getting, this is a process philosophy where you're not having a memory where you have like memories that are fixed objects, but you have the transition and processing of memories, and that's what's real. So this is a process philosophy, which was, in a little bit in vogue in the early 1900s. So, but like that's interesting here. So it's this semiotic thing is like you don't have just the signs in static. You have the signs and like the interpretation, our repertoire of interpreting the signs for our brain. That's what our brain does, and like that's what our consciousness understands. Energy says, it sounds similar to me to the concept of autopoiesis in biology, to which your understanding believes that life is self-generating, and to my understanding that's taken seriously by some biologists in the modern day. Yeah, so this is why these ideas are in vogue. They've been in vogue at different times over the last 200, 300 years. This was Bergson's view of memory, I think. Yeah, cool. That's cool. So yeah, this is kind of like, these are ideas that are around, and they're just getting rehashed now in this sort of proto-AI conception that has to do with semiotics. So it's saying, look, the processing of the data is what's real, and that works in computers and human brains. It's not just like however you're storing it. However you're storing it is kind of like arbitrary based on the system, but the processing of the data, the application of the semiotics, the semiosis, where you're processing the signs, that's what's doing the work. Okay. Today, it is a well-established fact that the notion of time is due to the memory function and time transformations in autorhythmic brain structures are indeed responsible for the notion of past, present, and future within the human mind. This is because memory functions do involve sequencing, which requires duration, when an interval is longer, that is, lasts more than a few seconds, it is no longer directly perceivable as a whole, but its length can be estimated on the basis of memory functions. So our memory allows us to see reality to extend backwards and forwards in time. In the eternal mystery of past and future, the latter is formulated and explained so, quote, if the future already exists, does it imply a completely deterministic world devoid of free will? This is a delicate matter which touches on deep philosophical issues concerning the nature of reality and our consciousness of it, but in one sense at least, the future is still indeterminate. In the subatomic domain, okay, now we're going to handwave a quantum theory. In the subatomic domain, the quantum theory of matter implies that there are no rigid mechanistic laws that connect the state of a system that is an atom to one moment to its state at a subsequent moment. Not fair. Even back in the 80s, you knew there were probabilistic laws. They knew this. This was not like a crazy thing. Now, of course, due to like uncertainty and shit, there are disconnects, but they're not infinitely possible disconnects. Like there's a probabilistic law here. Come on. They knew this. Instead, many possible future states arise, each with a certain probability of being the future. Okay, less bad right here. Nature is thus a game of chance, and the world can choose from a myriad of branches. In one somewhat unconventional interpretation of quantum theory, not one, but every future branch is separately realized in a sort of multifoliate reality of coexisting parallel worlds. So on this view, time is continually bifurcating, and the universe splits and resplits into a condition of cosmic schizophrenia. Thus, all futures are actual rather than potential. Yeah, so now we've got the many worlds interpretation. We've got all the worlds right here. But, this may have been fringe back in the day. Now I think it's got a bit more popularity. Cool. I think that's it. Okay. Finally, memory being the channel, semiotically as well as physiologically, of information, it must be said that people forget some facts and refabricate the gaps between the ones they do remember accurately. They tend to adjust memory to suit their picture of the world. Quote, we fill in gaps in our memory using chains of events that are logically acceptable. Our biases, expectations, and past knowledge are all used in the filling in process, leading to distortions in what we remember. End quote. So all memories, even those dredged up by psychoanalysis or hypnosis, are apt to be skewed. Or as Santayana might put it, those who remember the past are condemned to revise it. The moment the paper loses me, no. To be fair, I mean, that's it. That's the end of this paper. It's reading a historical work, Luminance. It's not going to be up to like modern standards. Does it really injure the point here that we can use semiotics to analyze these things? No, I think the point still stands that semiotics is basically a way of treating like abstract sign systems, which these artificial intelligences are. But anyway, if you are here, you are now free to rate the paper. Please do. You can rate the paper by throwing some emotes in chat. Oh, I don't have a link to this. Semiotics just sent me this one. This is an old paper, so I don't actually have a link. So yeah, Energy liked it, gave it a knife and a yay. So yeah, if you thought this paper was fun, made your brain dance, give you some ideas, give it a brain dance. Spelling and capitalization do count here. Nog Scream, if you give I thought it gave you some existential artistic drama, sometimes social drama. Nog Aura or Ouroboros for deep ancient ideas. Nog Knife for slicing and dicing arguments. Nog Navel gazing only for academics. Nog Turd, all style no substance, still poop underneath. And Nog Grapes for big claims that shrivel up. You can also give it a vote yay and vote nay, the global vote yay and vote nay of Twitch, or use my vote meh. Note, I do calculate an overall score on these things. If anything in the green will make the score go up, anything in the red makes it go down, and the vote meh makes it go to the middle. Luminance gave it a Nog Scream. Thank you. And it is, out of curiosity, are you generally interested in systems theory? It's on my radar Energy, but oh shit, you got a little colon after it's in a semiotics. I can fix that later if you don't. Thank you. It's on my radar Energy. I just don't have enough brain power and time to go pursue all the theories I'm interested in. I have to just stick to my guns in some sense. So I'm not really interested in systems theory, but like it's on the fringes of like things I will take a look at sometimes. Lumen says, I kind of think I want to give it grapes, so I want to check text to make sure. Yeah, I'm feeling that way too. At the end, it started with this scientific hand waving, which was very light. Like in the beginning, it stuck to the theory, but I know what you mean. It just kind of got very trying to make it like sound scientific, but like it's of the time. Maybe this is for 1981. This might just be like, yeah, cool. So since I must give it a yay and a brain dance, K-Pars give it a yay, navel gazing and Ouroboros. Yep. So yeah, and giving a double brain dance and a yay. So from Semiotics, yeah. So it's like, I don't want to hate on it too much. There was a little bit of that shit. Semiotics really liked it, but I mean, this is a classic paper at this point. It's classic. It's 1981, where it's setting up the way we've come to like look at a lot of these systems. Tinderos gave it a yay. Lumens gave it an Ouroboros and a grapes. Yeah, I think all of these are fair. So like, it's a little bit odd, of course, when we read historical papers here because we have hindsight and we know how things went, and we're reading the paper because it stood the test of time at this point. But like, yeah. And he says, I would recommend reading some of the writings of Nassim Taleb if I'm interested in system theory, because to my understanding, his ideas are on anti-fragility or examining supported by research and probability theory and such. Oh, cool. Yeah, I've heard about Taleb before. Yeah, I've seen, what book did he write? It was his book like The Black Swan or something. But yeah, like I said, I'm not, like, I just have other things at the moment, but like I keep an eye on that stuff. On the homepage thumbnail, you look so fucking done. Well, that's life, Vipers. Yeah, mentioned me 100 times. You wrote Black Swan, yeah. So, but I mean, this is what I mean. I kind of have it in the back of my head. I've seen his stuff around. DM'd, okay. That's funny. Oh, what on, yeah. Thank you, Vipers. Yes, that's basically how I feel. Yeah, I got you on Discord. Um, yeah, that's how I'm feeling lately. I'm just like, it's just tiring. All right, what do I gotta say? I gotta say something. And then if anyone else wants to get their rating in, do it now. I'm gonna say, it's got the historical shit going, but it was fun paper. We'll give it a Nogs. It made the argument back in the day that So I'm gonna give it a brain dance. It was fun. It introduced some ideas, but it also like was connecting up this early AI stuff to what is mind. So it got like this sort of what is it to actually be thinking, and that's why I'm giving it the Scream. You could be fair and give it like the Ouroboros, just the same maybe. But like I don't know if these are ancient ideas, but like it is making connections between computers in mind, which I think is cool. And then for the hand waving, which it did a little bit of, I'm gonna throw a grapes on that. But like overall, this is a nice paper. You can't find this paper anywhere online. Well, Semiotics found it. I don't know where Semiotics did find it, but Semiotics did find it somewhere. So yeah, I mean, it's a good paper. It's historical, and it's like, so it's a little bit more out of the novelty at this point, because of course there's contemporary semiotics that you can go read now. There's historical things, but like, yeah, it's nice. I like this. This is good. So, yeah, that's just what I think.